Let me turn to Mike McFaul, of course, former ambassador to Russia and our resident criminologist here. And I want to get to the what the heck is going inside the Russian military. But let's step back here a minute. A lot of historians, first of all, I want to talk about the contrast of the setting. 5 years ago in Helsinki, it's Trump and Putin. Here we are 5 years later. Oh, by the way, Finland's a member of NATO. I mean, this is just a stunning development in so many ways, is it not, Mike?
Chuck, it is. Absolutely. By the way, I was in Helsinki in 2018 working with the NBC team. And not only did Trump side with Putin about our intelligence, he also said we should hand over a bunch of Americans to Putin to be interrogated. I was one of them. So I remember Helsinki very well. This is a very different event. But historically, I'm glad you brought it up, because I think we have to appreciate just how big a deal this is. Throughout the Cold War, we had a noun for it. It was called Finlandization. And it was what the Soviets achieved in their relationship with Finland to keep them out of NATO, to keep them neutral. Sweden, 2 centuries of neutrality. Think about that. Yeah. 2 centuries of neutrality. And now Finland is in NATO. And in the run-up to the Vilnius summit, the Biden administration got the deal they needed with the Turks to bring Sweden in. This will be remembered as a very historic moment for the NATO alliance and as a big setback for Putin's foreign policy.
Are we about 10 years away? Is there going to be an Eastern European country that isn't going to be in NATO in 10 years if Ukraine wins this war, Mike?
I don't think there'll be a democratic country in Eastern Europe that won't be in NATO. I mean, look at that map that you keep showing. It's quite intense Stunning. With all that green. Of course, it matters how the war ends and will Ukraine prevail in this war? I think they are. I agree with the president when he says Putin is losing the war. But you don't judge wars in the first or second year. You judge them by the last year. But I do think momentum is on the side of the democratic countries in Eastern Europe, and the autocratic countries are on the losing side.
Let's talk about what's happening inside the Russian military. I know you monitor, you've got your own sources, you monitor what's going on in Telegram. We have our own reports here. It's always very hard to confirm who's in and who's out. But generals are being sacked. It looks like, is Prigozhin being treated better than those that supported him?
Pretty murky picture, but the fact that it's murky and confusing, I think, is bad for Putin. So if you go back, and we talked about it, you go back to the Prigozhin mutiny, some said, I was one of those that said this is a bad look for Putin. Others said, no, this is a sign of strength. He's getting rid of all these guys that don't support him. But look at where we're at now. We have generals resigning, and General Popov, you're right, on Telegram. I did watch it. I listened to it several times, who just was kicked out. He's one of the main commanders in this war. And he said, we stopped, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but he said, we stopped the Ukrainian armed forces in Ukraine, but then were stabbed in the back by our own generals back in Russia. That is not a message, if you're fighting a war, that you want one of your most popular commanders saying. And secondly, Prigozhin, we don't know what his status is right now, right? Putin called him a traitor, said there will be consequences, then said he'd be in exile in Belarus, and none of that appears to be true yet. So I think there's a lot of instability inside the armed forces that can't be good for Putin's ability to fight his war in Ukraine.
Were you surprised that Putin and Prigozhin met face-to-face?
Yes, I was surprised by that. Given that emotional speech that Putin gave, and he didn't have to give it, Chuck, right? He could have done this privately. He chose to go on national television. Think about it like an Oval Office address to the entire American people, where he called this guy a traitor, and then he's meeting with them. That is not a signal of strength. There's just no way you can spin that other than he just hopes that people are not paying attention. I suspect, however, that they are paying attention because Prigozhin does have a following within the Russian military. So maybe not all of Russia are, but the soldiers fighting in Ukraine, my guess is they're probably watching this.
What do you think happens to Shoigu and Gerasimov?
I don't know. I think...
I should say, for those not following along, the 2 leading military commanders right now for the Russian military, who Prigozhin was basically going to try to go to in sense, who was Prigozhin's target? Sorry for just want to bring folks up to speed.
Yeah. Defense Minister Shoigu and General Gerasimov, who's the head of the armed forces in Russia. Just a couple of days ago, Gerasimov was on TV, walking around, doing things. That was obviously a signal that he's still in power, that he hasn't been thrown under the bus. I don't think Putin can do that right now, pull either of those people out. That would look like complete capitulation to Prigozhin because of the critical things that he said that you just talked about. But down the road, 6 or 7 months from now, I would not be surprised if both of them were removed.
Mike McFaul, former ambassador to Russia for the United States. Appreciate you coming on, sharing your expertise.
Thanks,
good to talk with you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.